Now that you know conceptually how to do a BOV, know when not to use it. It sounds pretty hypocritical, doesn't it? We're talking about how to do a BOV, but then I want you to know how not to use it. If we have time, we'll come back to the capital stack. Know when not to use the term BOV. My middle son is with Apollo. It's private equity, and he is in the real estate group. And as a partner, he gets a lot of listing presentations. And I'm having this discussion with him. He says, you know, Dad, I sometimes feel a little sorry for the broker when they give me the BOV. And I said, Jess, why is that? He said, because they're in a box. He says, when I question them on where did that come from, they tap dance for 30 minutes. And so the problem is, how do you avoid getting in the BOV box? Because the discussion you really want to have when you're trying to list a property is not the defense of your BOV, it is the process that you're going to use to get them the best possible price. But what happens is because you've tied yourself to the mast and you said, my BOV, my broker opinion of value, and oh, by the way, if you ask 100 sellers, what does broker opinion of value mean to you? Madison, what do you think they say? What does BOV mean to you? Let's say you're a seller. What do you think I hear?
A calculation, like a legit.
Well, kind of, but what they say is that's what the broker thinks they're going to sell it for. But the fact of the matter is, you don't know what you're going to sell it for. But by giving them a BOV, and another broker who's also qualified comes in and says, my BOV is 26.5, why are they listing it with you at 25 when another credible broker comes in at 26.5? Are you with me? So what you want to try to do is, how do I avoid getting in the box? And so we started getting these calls in 2010. 2010, the institutional brokers are the ones that called me first. Mike, I'm losing listings to another qualified firm, and the reason they got the listing is their BOV was higher than mine. And here's also something that's kind of interesting. The broker that has the moral dilemma on coming in with the right number. You don't know what the right number is. If 50 investment brokers raise their hands when I say, how many of you have sold a property last year for more than your BOV, you're running the risk of losing the listing by giving them a BOV. But they still want a number, correct? So how do we handle it? You give them a range. You think that's what you do? You think you do this? Baloney. You think this is the way to do it, huh? Uh-huh. No. You want to know why? Because they see the low number on the range. And when they go back to committee, guess what they talk about? Galvin thinks he could sell for as little as $13.9 million. You never give them a range. Okay. And so I'll talk about what we do. But when you give them a range, they don't get fixated on the 18.2. Guess what they get fixated on? This is the weirdest thing that y'all do. It's because you're afraid to give them a BOV, you give them 50 numbers. Let me tell you what I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers, okay? Because the cost of capital could be all over the place, and it becomes a dodge, right? Now, let me tell you where we love this. When we do negotiating tomorrow, we absolutely use this when we're representing buyers. And you're going to see a wonderful approach that we use in buyer representation, where we say, if you buy this property at $13.9, that's an awesome buy. You're kind of at midpoint, and I think it's around 16.2, Jennifer, is what we picked for the negotiating slide. The same slide. I love this slide, but not for getting the listing, but for representing the buyer. So if someone comes to you and says, I'd like to come into your market, and how would you approach and advise me? I'd say, I want you to know the range of what this property could potentially sell for. So we're coming in at 13.9. We probably won't buy there, but you see we're marching to the stratosphere if we get anywhere near 18. So this is a wonderful buyer rep tool. It's a terrible tool for a listing presentation. Because they go back to committee, and there's two people from the committee of 4 or 5 that get fixated on, that broker thinks it could sell for as little as 13.9. And that really isn't the impression you want to leave with them, right? But what you tried to do is dodge the answer, what will it sell for? I don't know. So we have fixed it. Any other questions before I get into the fix?
When you give them a range,
I don't give them the range. But go ahead and ask your question,
like, for example, if I take this chart to the listing,
which you're not going to do because you've now attended our class, but go ahead. Go ahead with the question. Go ahead.
in this list, I'll let him pick the number or I pick the number once he signs it.
It's a Dodge. Here's the range it could sell for. Oh, thank you for enlightening me. It could sell for somewhere between 14 million and 18.2. Well, that's easy. Really? That's not what they're looking for, the range. But I see this every day in packages. You have no idea how often I see this crazy. Now, if you're doing buyer representation, they need to know the extremes of the market. They need to understand if they buy this property for 13.9, they got themselves a heck of a buy. Midpoint's going to be around 16.2, and you're crazy money at 18.2. All right, they're going to be talking about you, and it ain't going to be good. So at the next NAIOP function, when they're talking about you, you see them whispering when you walk in the room. They're going to say he must have a lot of money because he paid a record price for that property. But that's okay. You don't mind, do you? So this is a good buyer rep tool, but it might not be one you'd want to use for a listing because guess what they want to know? But we have fixed it, right, Tim? All right, here we go. Y'all ready? I'm about ready to show you something y'all never seen before. And there should be, you know, what are those things like they put warnings, you know, like warning label? I'm giving y'all a warning label. Did any of y'all ever see the movie with John Travolta, Phenomenon? Yeah. He gets hit by a purple light and he becomes a genius, remember? He learns Portuguese in 24 hours. He's reading 8 books like on physics a day, right? I'm about ready to hit you with the purple light. So y'all gonna be different. Some of you thinking, I'm okay just the way I am. I need y'all to step out for 15 minutes. Because once you see this, there's no going back. You with me? You kind of understand what I'm saying? So this is a disclaimer. That's the word I was looking for. It's a disclaimer that you're seeing something you've never seen before, but once you see it, you can't give it back. You got me? Here we go. You're going to see these pieces in our presentations at WIN, which we'll do tomorrow morning. You're going to see this wonderful slide on process also tomorrow. This is the kind of slide we love in a listing presentation where we want the seller to appreciate all the steps that are required by team members and approximately when they get done by. We'll address this tomorrow. But here we go. It's called the black swan. Sometimes we call it the outlier. And so I want you to get kind of a feel for how we make this presentation. You know, Galvin, when we met a couple days ago, you wanted me to come in and make a presentation on my broker opinion of value, right?
Yes, sir.
First, I got to tell you, this is a special property. Not only is it a special property, it's a special time like we've not seen in our lifetime. And a broker opinion of value is a disservice to you. Matter of fact, for any broker that gives you a BOV, they could potentially limit what you could sell this property for. And you also asked me, there were 3 important items that you wanted me to cover. Our access to buyers, our experience selling this kind of property, and you also wanted to know what we thought we could sell it for. First, before I answer that question, I want to tell you this is the kind of property that is suitable for what we call stretch. That this is a property that because of its location and the quality and its rent roll, it is deserving of an incredible price for you, which is what you're looking for, right? But let me go ahead and answer the questions that you wanted. Who are our buyers? Who do we have experience representing? And as we looked at this property, the first group that we're going to present it to will be our grave dancers. Sophisticated money, private equity. In this group, we've got 80, and we would be expecting 5 offers on this property from this group. Now, these are sophisticated buyers. We do find that their rates of return have come down a little bit. Now, let me just stop the music right there. This is the reason when Michael Griffin was talking to you yesterday, you got to have groups. If you were getting ready to make a listing presentation, you're saying, and you might call them something other than grave dancers, you might call them private equity, call them whatever you want to, but you need to instantly be able to go to a group within your CRM and pull up grave dancers, private equity, sophisticated money, whatever you've tagged the group, and you got the 80. Alternatively, if you don't have this, you've got to reconstruct this every single time. You're taking all this time and labor putting together a listing presentation when it should be done in 5 minutes once you say this property is suitable for these baskets. Then we'll go to our REITs. As you know, we've had years of experience with Parkway Properties, recently merged with Cousins Property. Within this vertical, we have 15. We're expecting 4 to 6 offers. From there, we'll go to our private REITs. We have been working with teachers for 25 years. Within this vertical, we have 30 groups expecting 10. From there, our institutions within this group, which is going to love this property, we've got 60 expecting more than 10% of this group to have a real interest in this property. From there, we'll go to our sovereigns. We've been working with the government of Singapore almost since the beginning of time. This is our fastest growing group of foreign capital. This group would have been 32 months ago. It's 40 today. We're expecting at least 4 to 5 offers from this group. And as you know, we set a record price on a property that was in the paper. We were proud of it, that we sold to Zurich. We did not know they were going to be the outlier at the time we listed the property. But they bought the property for more than we thought, and that's what we're looking for you. You want the outlier, don't you? You don't want the sweet spot. So you were kind enough to give us your financials, and as I'm saying, we're going to avoid a discussion of broker opinion of value. Now, by the way, when I say that in a listing presentation, who have I just set up? We're not going to, by doing a BOV, we could limit what we could sell this property for. Who have I just set up? I haven't set myself up. I've set up the other broker, because they now come in on page 7 about their BOV. They're stuck, because now where did that number come from and how'd you get there? I can tell you what the going-in cap rates are going to be. I can tell you what Zurich just paid, but you want stretch. $2,250,000 is the new NOI. When we got your next year's NOI, it was $2,150,000. We've cleaned that up. There's a little leasing that our team's going to do. There's a couple of expenses we thought were a little on the high side, so we kind of right-sized everything. So we're comfortable defending $2,250,000, all right? What we're going to do is give you the minimum that you should take for this property. The reserve price on this property is $41 million. That is the minimum number you should consider. But our job is not to get you the minimum. Our job is to get you stretch. Now let's stop the music right there. In fact, what is my BOV? Mathematically, what was my BOV? 41 million. Mathematically, my BOV, where I got the best possible mortgage I could get and the lowest cash on cash return, it gave me 41 million. But instead of calling it my BOV, I call it what? Reserve. Minimum. Because if I call it BOV, now my BOV is compared to others. If someone comes in at 42 million, but they call it BOV, the seller thinks they think it could sell for 42. But Mike said the minimum that I should take for that is 41 million. I now have running room. But if you give them a standalone 41 million, the bell's been rung. They're thinking you said it was going to sell for 41 million. I've wordsmithed it differently where I've said the minimum that you should take is 41 million. Do you all see the difference? And I know you think I'm splitting hairs, but I will tell you I've got some of the finest capital market brokers from San Diego to New York, from San Francisco. They're using this and have been using it from 2010. This works. This absolutely works, okay? We have added a couple things to this, haven't we? Oh, we haven't. We've got 2 others that I want you to write down, and it'll be on the slide that we get to you. We now put in here what we call get them in the tent. Yeah, I didn't change this slide. So it'll be on the presentation slide. We didn't get on this one. So here, because I just added it at the last minute, my fault. So now we have what's called get them in the tent. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Brokers define whisper price one or two things. I've had some brokers say, Mike, whisper to me would be 42.5. I don't like that whisper. The whisper I like is 40,500,000 or 40 million. You want to know why? Because I want as many people in the tent at the auction that I can possibly get. My job as a capital markets broker is to fill the tent. If you've ever seen an auction in Monterey that is run by Goodings, they get the best price for the Ferrari when there's more people in the tent, right? If you've ever been to Amelia Island when Goodings runs their auction there, they don't want 6 people in the tent, they want 600 in the tent, right? So I find that if I say my whisper price is 42, I lose a lot of people. If I say, Will, let me just tell you what, man, you're in the hunt. If you come in around 40 million, 39.8, you'll be taken seriously. I don't know where it's going to end up. Because as a good broker, I can work that number up. But if you don't even make an offer, because I say you got to be in 42, and Laura says, I ain't interested in 42. Now, if she gets interested in 39.5, and I keep selling, and I keep selling, and I keep coming up with the merits of the deal, that's how we work them for 42, 42.5. That's got to be explained to the seller. Then we have what is called guide price, and you'll see this, which Jennifer was kind enough to put in on the presentation deck, which we'll use tomorrow. So we have what's called a get them in the tent number, and then we have what's called the guide price. So the two numbers we give them, sometimes 3, is going to be what we think is qualified as stretch. So we don't give them so much a range like in the old Excel spreadsheet. What we do is at least 2, if not 3 numbers. Our minimum and our get them in the tent number is not the reserve. It's just to got to get the juices flowing. Are y'all with me? And then we give them a number somewhere around here, which probably, depending on what a 5 cap would be kind of like 42, 42.5, something like that. This is one more listings than you can imagine. We work with a fabulous retail broker in Washington, D.C. He was going to make a listing presentation to an owner that had developed a gorgeous lifestyle center. His BOV was 100 million. I said, Bill, you're not going to say the words BOV, but to set up your competitors. He said, Mike, I've never done a presentation like that before. I said, this is what we're going to do. And so he says, my reserve price is 100 million. He wins the listing. I was doing a program for this group of retail investment brokers in Dallas, and I ran into Bill. He said, Mike, I sold the property for 108 million. He says, I never would have gotten the listing had I called that 100 million BOV. But because it was called reserve, in the seller's mind, they knew that that was the minimum they should take. He says, and I sold the property for 8% more than I thought was going to be the number on its best day. You lose the listing when you say, my broker, you go in there, you're so proud. My BOV, this intellectual discussion, is 100 million. You lose the listing and somebody else gets it. BOV means this is what I think it's going to sell for. And Frank, you don't know what it's going to sell for. And you know what your job is? To win the listing. What techniques do I use? And let the market tell me what it's worth. This moral dilemma that all these brokers have, and these are some of the finest brokers. Elke, you know who I'm talking about. They got this problem that I want to be right on the number. It's wacky out there. You don't know the number. So do what an auctioneer, give me those places, those fancy places that sell jewelry and paintings. What's their? Sotheby's. They don't know what it's going to sell for. Sometimes they're even amazed what it sells for, right? Yes. And so it's the same thing. And yesterday I'm watching the news. Real estate is the darling of almost all the investment categories, right? There's a lot of demand out there, and when there's demand and inexpensive money, we see record prices. Your job is to win the listing. It's not to be right on the BOV. You got me?
Yes, sir.
But doesn't having the property sell for 8% more than you technically valued it at just kind of look like the broker sandbagged the value to make themselves win the listing in the first place?
I can tell you, no broker sandbags on the BOV. If there's any mistake they make, it ain't on. It's not that way. Had Bill thought it was going to sell for 108, he would have said my BOV is 110. You got me? There's no one that comes in low. Now, the only time you might come in low if this is really a mess. You know, there's no rent roll, it's got environmental, it's got all the stuff Tim talked about yesterday. That's a different deal. And oh, by the way, on that, you would do a BOV. Here's when we do BOVs. We do BOVs during recessions. We do BOVs on a tough property because we might be able to find one buyer in a year, maybe. Whenever our next recession takes place, you'll be doing BOVs. You won't be doing this. When there is no demand, you do BOVs. Maybe one day I could find you a buyer that would pay this. Today, and here's the single biggest difference. This used to be CAs, confidentiality agreements. We don't, no more. It's offers. I'm working with a group, multifamily in South Florida, and they looked at this and said, Mike, we don't track CAs any longer. There's so many of them. It's offers. I said, how many offers do you expect to get on this listing? They said maybe 15. I mean, the number of offers that we see today, if it's marketed properly, it goes back to that database. Do you have the database that you can get an e-teaser out to a large number in a short period of time and get that auction started? It all goes back to the database. If you don't have a quality CRM that you've identified who are the verticals are the most likely to pay the best price for this property, I don't know what you're doing, right? You're not getting the best possible price. Who likes this? Oh, you love it, don't you? Am I changing your mind a little bit about that crazy, wacky Excel spreadsheet thing? Yeah, I thought so. Now, you will use it for buyer rep, but you're not going to use it for a listing presentation. Yes, sir?
How are you pegging the reserve price? Just that one cap rate?
The reserve, that's a great question. I use the classic band of investment. What is the best mortgage I can get? And I do get the best mortgage. What would be the cash-on-cash return of the most aggressive investor? And if, let's say I've got one at 7, but I've got one at 5, I'm using the 5% cash-on-cash return because I want to get the absolute best defensible cap rate that I can come up with to set the reserve price. All right? And guess what? I'm not losing any sleep if the best number I come up with is 40 million. I'm not embarrassed. You got me? Because I love watching those Gooding auctions, and I've seen Lord knows how many, where you see the guy that owns the 55 Ferrari, and there's a reserve, and it's slowing down, and the reserve hadn't been lifted, and guess what happens? The auctioneer looks at the owner, and they do some kind of body language signal. What's the signal? Well, no, to lift the reserve. What is it? It's not that.
I mean, I've never been in a car auction.
Well, I've seen hundreds of them. So there's a sign. There's a sign. Everybody knows the sign. And they do the sign, and guess what the auctioneer yells out? Reserve's off. And it goes a little bit more, and it closes, but it came in for less than reserve. But at least he's tested it. Sometimes we don't get the reserve. Things change. And they ask you, but Mike, you said the minimum I should take for that property is $41 million. I said, yeah, things have changed in the 60 days. So I've got you $40,200,000. And I know what you paid for this property. So imagine you got $40,200,000 in the middle of the table. All you got to do is sign the agreement, and it's yours. But I don't think we'll see another day like this, at least in our lifetime. And I'm thinking you'll regret that you didn't take the $40,200,000 2 years from now. Because once the prices reach the peak, they just kind of tend to wind down and enter equilibrium at some point in time. The decision's yours. It's your property. I can tell you what I would do if it was my property. I couldn't get my hands on the $40,200,000, knowing what your basis is. You have made a huge profit. Don't get crazy on me now, okay? I got no problem. I got, bro, what do I tell them if I don't get the reserve? You tell them the truth. Things change, and this is the best number I can get you. All right? So, it's a great number. And you know what? The reserve I put on there, I'm still comfortable with the reserve because we came pretty doggone close. All right? Questions? But how many of you are selling properties that are not institutional? They're more private client, right? So you want that slide?
Yeah.
I thought you would. What's that?
You had mentioned cash and cash. Cash and cash probably wouldn't be in this institutional one, right? Because you're going straight cap rate with no debt on that.
They might take it down all cash, but many of them would put leverage on there at some point in time. Take, for example, a REIT's going to put how much leverage on a property if they finance it? Maybe, tops, right? Because I don't know of many REITs that are more than 40% leveraged across the portfolio. So they've got some properties that could be 70%, but then they've got some that have no debt, just a combination. But they could have bought it all cash off their line or out of, a cash account, but oftentimes they'll come back with very attractive financing. They could. Yes?
Where are you finding a lot of your institutional sellers?
Where are you finding the institutional sellers? Well, first, life companies. Northwestern, John Hancock, Equitable, USAA. Dirk Moses has been at USA for years buying real estate. I mean, almost all the life companies. To me, and I think the ones that you had in institutions, which, Tim, was a great slide, I had never seen it before. You had institutions where life, REITs, and what was the third group? Pension funds. There's directories on every one of them. And every one of them has a real estate group, and every pension fund's allocating 8%, 9% of what they have into real estate, correct?
They're the easiest ones to find. I used to use Crittenden. Does anybody?
And y'all know where this term black swan or outlier comes from? Huh? No. No. They never existed until somebody was in Australia and they saw this gaggle of black swans. And they said, no one had ever seen one before. It's an event that takes place that we've never seen before, but the fact that we've never seen before doesn't mean it can't happen again. Does that make sense? And so the reason I use the term either outlier or black swan is from Malcolm Gladwell's book. Was it Outliers? What was the name of the book? Where he talks about it all the time, that these events do happen. And that's what we want to try to articulate to the seller. Our job is to find the outlier. It's to pay the one. You don't want me to find someone to pay the BOV. You want me to find someone that pays dearly. You want a Zurich. All right. Here's Black Swan private client. You know, when we met last week and you asked me to come in today and make a listing presentation, the one thing that we had decided on is we didn't want to talk broker opinion of value. Our team looked at this property and we've come to the realization this is a special property. And not only is it a special property, it's a special time like we've never seen. This is the kind of property that is perfect for stretch. Does any of this sound familiar? You also asked me to talk about, do we have experience selling this kind of property? Who do we think is the probable buyer? And then you also asked us what we thought it was going to sell for. And we're going to discuss what we think the pricing should be. So we took a hard look at our database, and as you know, it is the largest single database in the market of qualified investors. And this is interesting that I'm in Orlando, because I live in Orlando and have for over 30 years, but I don't know any of these names, believe it or not. I do know Emerson because where we are in Altamont Springs, Emerson owns a bunch of stuff, but I think it's a group out of England, isn't it? Who's from Orlando? Is that right, Emerson, you know? So I used Orlando examples. So we have local investors that are very active in the Central Florida area, as you know, like Emerson, that we've been working with for years. We would expect 3 offers from this group. From there, who's anyone with Quest in here? Didn't I see Quest? Huh? Different Quest. So we've got Quest, which is an active limited partnership, which we would expect of the 5 that are in this group, 2. And then we have our private REITs like Bourne. We've got a total of 9 that are interested in buying in Central Florida. 3 should make an offer. From there, we've got our financial advisors. We've got a wonderful relationship, not just with Edward Jones, but with others. And within this group, we've got 7 who are allocating some of their investment proceeds, and we're expecting 2 offers. And then we've got the Dr. Phillips Family Trust that we've worked with for years. Family trusts that are active in Central Florida are a total of 8. And guess what? When we do this, they say, well, of course I know Dr. Phillips, but what are they also thinking about? Who are the other 7? That's the first thing that goes through their head. Well, we know that one, but who are the other 7 that Mike has in his CRM that he's got this relationship with? That's why this is such a powerful presentation. And I'm even forecasting the number of offers that we're going to get. And then our job is to find you, and I don't even know who this logo was when I captured this, Jennifer, I can't remember. So we do the same thing. We'll tell them, here's what their going in cap rates are. We say, here was the NOI that you gave me was $875. I walked the property with leasing. They said they could easily lease this space in the next 90 days. I walked the property with property management. They're convinced that our utilities were a little on the high side. We're going to save you 5 cents there. So the NOI that we're going to put in our package is going to be $900,000. We're going to defend it all day long. As I said, we're not going to give you a BOV. That's a disservice to this property. The minimum that you should take for this property is $15 million. The $15 million, though, mathematically is my BOV. But I don't call it BOV because I run the risk of losing the listing by calling it a BOV, because when they put my BOV on a spreadsheet compared to 2 other firms that made BOVs, I'm going to lose to the group that came in at 16.5. Every single day you're losing a listing because you're so intellectually proud of the math that you've come up with that we don't even know if it's going to come to pass. So why run the risk of losing the listing by putting on page 6? And I've seen this 1,000 times, and you got to stop using books. You're going to hear this tomorrow. Books are from like the 80s. When you bring in a book to make an investment sale presentation, and you put that book down, what is the first thing that the seller turns to? The what? Page 7, the BOV. This is how the presentation goes. So put the book down. Act like that's a book and you're the broker. Put the book down. Thank you, Trey. $12 million. $12 million. Where the hell that number? This is the first 30 seconds. You got the feeling this is not going well. This does not feel right, right? That's what's happening. And now you start to tap dance for 30 minutes. Oh, Mike, I'm teasing. Pull that page out of there. I'm just jacking you around a little bit. I'm going to get to, I mean, you're stuck, right? You can't use a book on an investment sale listing presentation. They get ahead of you, particularly if you're presenting to a committee. You got the CFO here, you got the CIO there. I've done too many. I know what happens. They're all over the place. You've lost control in the first 2 minutes. You got to use a digital presentation, and then if they want a book, you give them the book, you know, at the end. But they're all locked up. We'll get into all that tomorrow when we get into listing presentations. Fair enough? So this is my minimum. Let somebody else come in at 15.5. Okay, that's their BOV. But Mike said the minimum I should take is $15 million. Yes, sir.
Are we assuming that we're pricing this at $15 million, or we're pricing it as P&D or offers?
Well, if it's a cream puff, we're going out unpriced. Now, institutional has been going out unpriced since the beginning of time. Private client brokers used to tell me, Mike, if I send out a package with no price on it, they'll throw it away. That's not what I hear today. And I haven't heard that in 4 or 5 years. So you got the Starbucks over here, and you got the this and there, and it's a great little property. They go out unpriced. I'm sending the package to an adult that has whatever software they have. Let them determine what my cash flow is worth, right? And so we see more and more go out unpriced, even the smaller properties. If it's tough property, it's going to go out priced. But if it's really a nice property, more and more that are what we would call private client, less than $15 million, they go out with no price tag on it. Great question. But here's what's also interesting. In years past, the call to offer was really a date. Today, it's complete fiction. It's part of the auction. There's calls for offers, but then we go back to the 3 that really like it and say, it's too close to call. We're going to give you all a few more days to really kind of take a look at the price. And we're going to have, and now it's a call for offer 2. So most of these are going call for offers the 3rd time. I love it, right? Because that's what my job is to use every, but what happens is if you give them a BOV, you get hung up on the time that you need to talk about your process. You never get to the process of multiple rounds and call for offers and unpriced. Of the 45 minutes they give you, you got 35 minutes consumed defending a number that can't be defended. So you give them that wacky spreadsheet, just pick one that you like, but they don't do that. They look at the 13 million instead of the 18 million, you don't get the listing anyway. Y'all, who's loving this? And this ain't no textbook stuff I'm giving you, you know that, don't you? This is the real deal. This is what the heavy hitters are using right now, have for years. I can't tell you some of the finest capital markets brokers that we've consulted with and worked with their teams and worked on their presentations said, Lipsy, this sucker is unbelievable. I no longer feel uncomfortable when I give them the number because I have wordsmith, this isn't my BOV, this is the minimum that you should take. That's a whole different conversation, isn't it? And now when you say the minimum, what does that mean? Well, let me tell you how we work the price up. Or alternatively, this mathematical discussion that takes 30 minutes to never get resolved. Now, here's another question. I might, and you'll see this on the deck tomorrow where we've got the get them in the tent price and we've got the guide price. If I go out priced, I probably would go out with a guide price, as much as I would hate to do it. Because I would hate to go out. But you know what? Any of y'all have a residential background? Who has a residential background? How many of you have seen houses sell for more than the list price? All of us. It's wacky.
A lot of lowball offers, so even if you came in at that price, I mean, I've seen people.
But my job is to get as many people interested in the property as possible to work them up. So I hope I can go out on price, but if I can't, and I had to put a number on there, well then maybe you got a choice. Guide price, reserve, or you could go with what we call get them in the tent price. All right, one more slide. Do any of you have nice looking buildings that are empty? Any of you have nice looking buildings that are empty? You know, our team went and looked at the property. It's a special property. It didn't have to be on just cash flow. It's a special property. And you know, this is a special time. We're going to see a lot of demand for this property. You really end up in what we call the last mile category, which means we're seeing record prices. But we took a look at the property and we thought about who would be the right user or buyer. Now watch this. This is going to be a little bit different. Now we get into different categories. We know that developers would be interested in this property. We've got 9 in this category. We would be expecting 3. Investors, we've got 12 in this vertical, expecting 4. So now alternative use. But you got to have these in your CRM. If you don't have them, it would take you days to reconstruct this slide. Speculators, users with immediate need, last mile, right? Blocks, and now, in this case, Toys R Us is back in the game again, right? We want to let them know, but what we do here is we price it based on price per square foot. And someone asked me about that when I first got started. Was it you, Galvin? And so this, on an empty building, where that has no cash flow, then we would revert to price per square foot.
That was my question on not just an empty building, but say 50% vacancy or 60% or 70, whatever it is. But where's that prospect where you shouldn't go on cap rate, but you should go on price per pound?
Is it meant to be a property that has true net operating income?
Yes.
Well, you've got to do a forecast of once it's leased up and all that kind of stuff. But as an alternative, you would say this building replacement cost, you know, you would have that discussion so it would make the buyer feel comfortable they weren't paying a crazy number per square foot. But if you're in a cash flow world, the emphasis is going to be placed on the cash flow.
How would you discount?
How would I discount what?
The price based on the tremendous amount of vacancies, but not going below, like severely below replacement costs.
I'm going to let Jim and Tim answer that question. To me, the way that I would price it would be a long lease up. If I thought it was going to take $50 in TI, it'd be $70 in TI. So in my assumptions, I would use the most aggressive assumptions. Does that make sense? So instead of me getting hung up on price per square foot, I'd say, I love this building. Should take 50, but I'm putting 65 in there because I know it will be 65 or 70. I think I could lease it up a year, but I'm putting 2 years in there. So all my assumptions would be at the outer limits, and then I'd crank my returns. That's how I would do it, but there might be another investor that would do it completely different.